Red Bull's Hidatsa hunters emerged from the Heart River thicket, and Isaiah's rifle wavered, unsure of friend or foe. Pierre crawled closer, spotting familiar crane feather headbands, and signaled safety. After months of evading Lakota and Pawnee, this reunion promised rest. But could they trust the calm, or would the final miles to the Hidatsa village hide one last threat? Isaiah Reinhart stood on the St. Louis docks, his blonde hair glinting under the July sun as he adjusted the flintlock on his Kentucky rifle, its walnut stock worn smooth from years of use. At 18, the tall South Carolinian carried scars from home. At 16, he'd fled Beaufort after his brother Philip stole his sweetheart, Annabelle, the betrayal, a raw wound that drove him west. He gripped a horse's lead rope, his knuckles white, remembering how Cherokee friends had taught him to skin deer and track wild boar through dense pine forests. Those skills earned him a place among the Assiniboine and Hidatsa, who called him Yellow Hair for his pale locks. Now, he stood with his wives, Running Moon, an Assiniboine with a steady gaze, and White Bird, a Hidatsa whose quick hands checked her bowstring. Their children, 1-year-old Catherine Lightshines and infant Jacques Black Elk, were strapped to their mothers' backs in hide cradles. Isaiah scanned the dock, his green eyes narrowing at the clamor of merchants haggling over furs, his boots itching to leave the city's chaos for the open plains. Pierre Ledoux, 20, crouched beside a pack horse, tightening a rope around a bundle of buffalo jerky. His dark eyes flicked across the crowd, missing nothing. Born to French trapper Jacques Ledoux and Assiniboine Cypress birdwoman, Pierre was raised among teepees, not cabins. He slipped an arrow from his quiver, testing its fletching, then slung his short-barreled rifle across his back. His wife, Shooting Star Woman, daughter of Chief Yellow Wolf, stood nearby, her new Kentucky rifle balanced in her hands, 2 pistols tucked into her belt. Their son, August Little Bull, slept against her chest. Pierre's father had taught him to read the landhow to spot a deer's trail in bent grass or hear a wolf's tread in the dark. Jacques' death still stung. Pierre signed Happy Hunting Grounds to himself, his jaw tight, vowing to protect his family. He spoke French to a passing trader, then switched to Assiniboine, directing Shooting Star Woman to check August's cradle ties. His fluency in both tongues, plus sign language, made him the group's voice in tense exchanges. St. Louis buzzed like a kicked hive. Barrels rolled across the docks, and trappers shouted over mugs of ale in smoky taverns. Isaiah and Pierre had just sold 930 beaver pelts for $9,300, a haul that filled their pouches with coin for supplies. But the city grated on them. Isaiah flinched as a cart's wheels squealed, his hand hovering near his knife. Pierre sidestepped a drunk trapper named Beecher, who muttered, "I don't trust half-breeds or Injuns." Isaiah shot Pierre a look, and they moved on, avoiding trouble. They knew the Missouri River route west promised worse. Lakota, Pawnee, and Blackfeet warriors patrolled those lands, their arrows swift and silent. "We leave at dawn," Isaiah said, his voice low. Pierre nodded, pointing to the horses. "Check the hooves. Long road ahead." At Manuel Lisa's trading post, Isaiah haggled for supplies. 50 pounds of cornmeal, dried buffalo strips, 4 buffalo hide blankets, 3 coils of hemp rope, 10 pounds of gunpowder, and 100 lead bullets. He ran his hands over each horse's legs, pressing their hooves to test for cracks. Pierre stacked the goods, tying them with double knots. Their arsenal was ready. Isaiah and Pierre carried Kentucky rifles, flintlock pistols, and hunting knives. Running Moon and White Bird each had a pistol, a knife, and a recurved bow with 20 arrows. Shooting Star Woman packed her rifle, 2 pistols, and a skinning knife, her fingers brushing the trigger guard as she practiced her aim. Pierre traced their route in the dirt with a stick, marking a path that skirted the Missouri's main trails where Lakota and Pawnee hunted. "Forests, not plains," he said, tapping the map. Isaiah would guard the rear, Pierre the front, with the women and children shielded in the center. They rehearsed hand signals, fingers pointed for move, a flat palm for stop to keep silent in hostile lands. Running Moon knelt by Catherine, whispering, "Quiet now, little one," teaching her to hush at a finger's touch. Shooting Star Woman fired her rifle at a distant stump, the shot echoing as she adjusted her stance. "Ready," she said, meeting Pierre's eyes. The group's unity was their strength, each member's role clear as they braced for the journey's dangers. The group rode out from St. Louis at dawn, hooves clopping on the riverbank as they waved to Manuel Lisa, his boat bobbing behind him. Isaiah exhaled, the city's din fading to the hum of cicadas and the rush of the Missouri River. His rifle rested across his saddle, barrel cool against his palm, but his gut churned at the thought of Lakota scouts. Pierre, at the front, tugged his horse's reins, his bow slung low, arrow nocked. The grassy outskirts gave way to sprawling prairies, where knee-high grass swayed under sparse oak groves. The open land offered clear sightlines but left them exposed. They stuck to faint trails near the Missouri, its muddy waters glinting, a source for refilling canteens but a beacon for tribal hunters. "Camp inland tonight," Pierre signed, pointing to a cluster of willows. Isaiah nodded, sweeping the horizon with his eyes. The terrain fought them. A cold drizzle soaked their buffalo hide blankets, weighing down the pack horses. Mud clung to hooves, forcing Isaiah to dismount and scrape it off with his knife, checking for stones lodged in the frogs. Chilly gusts whipped across the plains, stinging their faces. At night, they huddled around a small fire, its glow hidden by a boulder, the crackle of twigs barely audible. Pierre scouted the perimeter, his moccasins silent, pausing to listen for distant hooves. They avoided the Missouri's main trails, weaving through dense forests where pine needles muffled their steps. Isaiah dragged a branch behind them, smoothing out hoofprints in the dirt. Pierre hunted with his bow, felling a rabbit with a single arrow through its flank, then a quail, its feathers scattering. "No rifles," Isaiah whispered, glancing at the children. "Too loud." Pierre skinned a rattlesnake by firelight, its meat sizzling on a stick, the group eating in silence to avoid drawing eyes. Running Moon and Whitebird worked tirelessly. They pitched hide tents, staking them deep against the wind, and hung strips of rabbit meat to dry over smoldering coals. Shooting Star Woman paced the camp's edge, her rifle cradled, her eyes catching the glint of moonlight on the river. Catherine Lightshines whimpered once, her cry cutting the night. Isaiah froze, hand on his pistol, as Running Moon pressed a finger to the girl's lips, murmuring an Assiniboine tale of a wolf outrunning the wind. August Little Bull stirred against Shooting Star Woman, and Pierre knelt to soothe him, his hand gentle but his eyes scanning the dark. Whitebird taught Isaiah the Hidatsa word for river Minnetonka pointing to the Missouri's flow. "Tatanka," she added, mimicking a buffalo's gait, making Catherine giggle softly. The group shared tasks. Pierre hauled water in hide pouches, Isaiah split kindling with his knife, and the women repacked supplies, their hands quick and sure. Trouble came in flashes. A wolf's howl split the night, and a pack horse reared, its ropes snapping taut. Isaiah grabbed its bridle, whispering, "Easy, easy," as Pierre retied the cornmeal sacks. Another day, Pierre crouched by a creek, tracing fresh footprints due wide for deer, too deep for a lone wanderer. "Human," he signed, his fingers sharp. Isaiah signaled a halt, and they doubled the night watch, slipping away before sunrise. One afternoon, no streams appeared, their canteens low. Whitebird dug for roots, her knife slicing through earth to unearth bitter but hydrating tubers, which she boiled with hot stones. Shooting Star Woman patched a torn harness with leather strips, her needle flashing in the firelight, securing the load. Each challenge was met with quick hands and sharp minds, the group's eyes always on the horizon, toward the Hidatsa village where safety waited if they could outwit the dangers lurking in the wild. Isaiah Reinhart's group rode into Chief Longtime Dog's Hidatsa village, horses kicking up dust near the Knife River's muddy banks. Villagers surged from earth lodges, shouting greetings. Longtime Dog, braids tight and hawk feathers in his hair, strode forward, gripping Isaiah's forearm. "You made it," he said in Hidatsa, clapping Pierre's shoulder. Whitebird unslung infant Jacques Black Elk from his cradle, holding him up. Longtime Dog touched the boy's cheek, signing, "Our blood." Running Moon loosened Catherine Lightshine's straps, letting the toddler stumble toward village children kicking a hide ball. Pierre scanned the lodges 30, maybe 40, with smoke curling from cook fires. Warriors on horseback circled the perimeter, short bows slung across their backs, eyes sharp. "Safe here," Pierre signed to Shooting Star Woman, who nodded, her Kentucky rifle still in hand. Longtime Dog waved them to a fire pit, where women set out wooden bowls of boiled corn and buffalo ribs, the meat charred from cedar flames. The chief raised a hand, and 2 drummers pounded rawhide drums, their rhythm quick. 6 dancers circled, moccasins stamping, eagle feathers bobbing. Isaiah untied a bundle of 12 beaver pelts, their fur slick, and stacked them before Longtime Dog. "For your warriors," he said, his Hidatsa rough. Pierre added a coil of hemp rope, traded in Saint Louis. The group moved to a guest lodge, its hide walls stitched tight. Running Moon rolled out buffalo blankets, and Catherine curled beside Auguste, both asleep in minutes. Isaiah took first watch, pistol drawn, but the village's quiet broken only by a dog's bark let him breathe. Shooting Star Woman cleaned her rifle's barrel, her fingers steady, while Whitebird sharpened her knife on a whetstone. Around the fire, Pierre's hands moved in sign language, sharp and slow. "Jacques Ledoux, my father, hunts in the spirit lands." Longtime Dog's eyes narrowed, and Red Bull, a warrior with a scarred cheek, gripped Pierre's wrist. "He taught you well," Red Bull said, passing a gourd of water. Pierre swallowed hard, then looked away. Red Bull's voice lightened. "Full moon's belly grows, a child by spring." Isaiah grinned, pulling a steel knife with a deerbone handle from his belt. "For your son," he said, tossing it to Red Bull, who caught it mid-air. Longtime Dog pointed to 4 fresh horses tethered nearby, their coats brushed, and 2 women brought 30 pounds of dried buffalo strips and a hide sack of cornmeal. Pierre lashed the supplies to their pack animals, doubling the knots. A Hidatsa elder showed Isaiah a dance 2 steps forward, 1 back, arms bent like a hawk's wings. Running Moon sat with 3 women, threading blue beads into Assiniboine patterns, trading them for Hidatsa red shell designs, their needles flashing in the firelight. Trouble arrived with Toussaint Charbonneau, his boots scuffing the dirt as he entered the village, Shoshone wife Sacagawea behind him, her son Jean-Baptiste in a cradleboard. Pierre stepped forward, French clipped. "Why here?" Charbonneau's smile was thin, his hand resting on a rusty flintlock pistol. Isaiah's fingers grazed his Kentucky rifle, recalling stories of Charbonneau ditching trappers during Pawnee ambushes. Whitebird leaned toward Running Moon, voice low. "His heart's no good." Sacagawea kept her eyes down, her hands tight on her son's cradle, and Running Moon's jaw clenched, itching to speak but holding silent. Charbonneau offered to join their St. Louis trek, his voice slick. "We're stronger together." Pierre's eyes flashed. "Never." Isaiah stepped closer, rifle half raised. "Start trouble. You're dead." Shooting Star Woman, pistols tucked in her belt, shifted her stance, ready. Later, the women gathered in the lodge. "He'll bring danger," Shooting Star Woman said, checking her rifle's flint. "We leave now," Whitebird agreed, folding a blanket. A boat's creak on the Knife River brought relief Manuel Lisa, his weathered face lit by a lantern tied up at the bank. "St. Louis, 2 days!" he shouted, waving. Isaiah saw their chance. "We go with him," he told Pierre, who nodded, already rolling tents. The group moved fast. Running Moon tied cornmeal sacks, Whitebird checked bowstrings, and Shooting Star Woman secured Auguste's cradle, testing her pistol's triggers. Pierre counted bullet 60 left, while Isaiah inspected the horse's hooves. Whitebird hugged a Hidatsa woman, tears falling, and pressed a beaded necklace into her hand. "For you, when I return." Longtime Dog raised both hands, chanting a Hidatsa prayer, his voice steady. "Spirits guard your path." Isaiah shouldered his rifle, the weight familiar, but his gut tightened for the journey ahead. As they boarded Lisa's boat, village children ran alongside, yelling, "Come back strong!" Pierre raised a hand, and the current pulled them away, lodges shrinking in the dusk. After St. Louis, the group trekked north along the Missouri, averaging 22 miles daily, hooves churning soft earth. Pierre crouched at dusk, scratching a root in the dirt with a knife, circling a camp by a stream, cottonwoods blocking the wind. "Sleep here," he signed, pointing. Isaiah took night watch, rifle across his knees, while Pierre grabbed 2 hours rest, then tapped Isaiah's shoulder to switch. Winds howled, ripping at their buffalo hide tents, and Running Moon staked them with river stones, her hands chapped. She wrapped Catherine and Auguste in deerskin cloaks, tying them tight against the drizzle. Fires stayed small, hidden behind boulders, the wood's hiss barely audible. "Cover the smoke," Isaiah said, piling dirt on the embers. Pierre spotted a buffalo carcass by the river, its ribs split by a Lakota arrow, black-tipped with crow feathers. "They're near," he signed, waving the group into a pine thicket, branches scraping their arms. One night, Isaiah heard hooves and a low chant across the prairie. He signaled 2 fingers down, and the group dropped into a briar patch, horses' reins pulled taut. Shooting Star Woman knelt, rifle aimed, as Pawnee scouts passed, their war clubs swinging at their sides. The group held still, sweat beading, until silence returned. "Woods tomorrow," Isaiah said, sketching a detour on Pierre's map. "Open land's death." Pierre nodded, testing his bow's draw. They dragged branches to the riverbank, carving false hoofprints that ended in a rocky gully, a dead end for trackers. Pierre's bow took an antelope, the arrow piercing its flank, and Isaiah's sling dropped 3 rabbits, their legs twitching. Whitebird taught Running Moon to smoke the meat, draping strips over a willow frame above a low fire, the scent faint but rich. They drew water from springs, boiling it with stones heated red-hot, steam curling in the cold. Whitebird's knife dug up sunchoke roots, their bitter crunch easing hunger, and she mashed yarrow for Pierre's sore shoulder. Shooting Star Woman checked the pack animals, retying frayed ropes, and buried extra jerky under a flat stone, marking it with a scratched X. Running Moon rationed cornmeal with a bone scoop, doling out half a cup each, her eyes counting the days. 10 more, she said, knotting the sack. Running Moon and Whitebird traded cooking duties, searing antelope on cedar sticks, and taught the children Hidatsa numbers 3, Dawit, 4, Cusa. Shooting Star Woman hummed Assiniboine war chants, her voice sharp, blade in hand. Catherine's cry broke the night once, and Isaiah's hand flew to his pistol, heart pounding. Pierre scouted the perimeter, bow drawn, returning with a signed safe. Whitebird pointed to the stars, teaching Isaiah, Tatanka buffalo, "O waity, wind." He echoed her, voice low. Pierre showed Auguste a deer track, guiding his finger along the mud. "See the split," he whispered. Shooting Star Woman honed her knife on a river rock, vowing, "Auguste lives." Near the Yellowstone, Isaiah warned of Blackfeet raids by the Bighorn. "Stay west," he said, pointing to rocky hills. Pierre saw campfire smoke, a thin wisp against the sky. "Blackfeet," he signed, urging speed. They hugged forest cover, pines hiding their trail. Isaiah picked a jagged detour, and Pierre pried stones from the horse's hooves, blood flecking his hands. A twig snapped at midnight, and Isaiah's rifle swung up, finger tense. "Trackers?" he hissed. They left a false trail to a creek, then pushed hard, hooves pounding. Pierre scaled a ridge, scanning for Blackfeet tents, his breath steaming. "Clear," he signed, and the group exhaled, pressing toward the Heart River, Hidatsa safety just beyond the next rise, if they could outrun the shadows. Isaiah Reinhart yanked his horse's reins, skidding to a stop on the Heart River's bank, his Kentucky rifle swinging up as he spotted a buffalo herd, their hooves churning dust. Pierre Ledoux, 3 paces left, froze, his eyes narrowing at 10 riders on a ridge, bows drawn, silhouettes sharp against the September sky. "What tribe?" Isaiah hissed, thumb cocking his rifle's flintlock. Pierre shook his head, signing, "Down." The group veered into a chokecherry thicket, branches snagging their sleeves. Isaiah slid off his horse, checking his pistol's powder, while Pierre knocked a goose-fletched arrow, bowstring taut. Running Moon and Whitebird hustled Catherine Lightshines and Auguste Little Bull behind a mossy boulder, their skinning knives glinting. Shooting Star Woman dropped to one knee, Kentucky rifle aimed, her 2 flintlock pistols tucked in her sash. "Hold fire," she whispered, finger steady on the trigger, tracking the lead rider's horse. Pierre belly crawled to a ridge, his elk-hide moccasins silent, pine needles sticking to his palms. He peeked over, spotting red leather reins and crane feather headbands Hidatsa signs. He flashed 2 fingers up, signing safe, then slid back, dirt smudging his cheek. "Red Bull's crew," he said, brushing off his bow. Isaiah's shoulders dropped, rifle easing down, pulse still thudding in his neck. "Close one," he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. The women lowered their weapons, Running Moon's bowstring slackening, Shooting Star Woman's rifle resting on her shoulder. The group remounted, Catherine and Auguste secured in their cradles, as the riders closed in. Isaiah's eyes lit, recognizing Red Bull's broad frame and scarred cheek. "Good to see you, Red Bull," he said in Hidatsa, grinning. Red Bull barked a laugh, raising his lance. "Yellow Hair, still alive!" he shouted, nudging his horse forward. Red Bull dismounted, crushing Pierre in a bear hug, his elk-hide vest creaking. "Shooting Star? Little Bull?" he asked, scanning the group. Pierre pointed to his wife, cradling Auguste, her rifle slung. "There." Whitebird stepped up, untying her quiver. "Uncle Long-Time Dog?" she asked, voice eager. "Strong as ever," Red Bull said, clapping her arm. He grinned, tapping his chest. "Full moon's got my child coming springtime. You'll see the naming." Isaiah untied a hide pack, pulling out 20 pounds of dried antelope strips, their edges curled from smoke. "For your men," he said, handing them over. Red Bull tossed back a blood-smeared sack of buffalo meat, fresh from dawn's hunt, and Pierre lashed it to a pack horse, doubling the hemp knots. Red Bull nudged Pierre, smirking. "Still falling off colts chasing rabbits?" Shooting Star Woman snorted, holstering her pistols, as the group's laughter cut the tension, even Catherine giggling in her cradle. At dusk, they sat by a fire, cedar logs spitting sparks. Red Bull waved at a young hunter sharpening an obsidian-tipped arrow. Crow-Wing's shot pierced a buffalo's heart at 30 paces, he said, slicing the air. Isaiah nodded, cleaning his rifle's barrel with a ramrod, impressed. Running Moon knelt by Catherine, braiding her hair. Red Bull fought 3 Lakota alone, saved his horse, she whispered, tying a red cord. Catherine's eyes widened, clutching a stick like a lance. Red Bull pointed to his quiver, teaching Isaiah and Pierre. Wahi, arrow. Tatanka, buffalo, he said, stomping like a charging bull. Pierre tried the words, mangling Tatanka, and the hunters roared, slapping their thighs. After buffalo ribs, the Hidatsa struck a drum, chanting a victory song, voices deep and rhythmic. Whitebird joined, her bow across her lap, then Pierre, his hands clapping time. Isaiah added his voice, off-key but loud, and Running Moon hummed along, her knife idle. Whitebird sat with 3 Hidatsa women, unrolling Assiniboine beadwork white shells in zigzag linstrading for their elk-hide patterns, needles flashing under torchlight. Red Bull waved toward a camp 3 miles off, near a Heart River bend. Sleep with us, then we ride to the village, he said, swinging onto his horse. Lead on, Isaiah replied, checking his rifle's flint. The group trailed Red Bull's 10 warriors, their lances tied with red cloth, a wall against Blackfeet scouts. Pierre rode beside Red Bull, pointing to a buffalo trail. Aim low, behind the shoulder, Red Bull said, tapping his ribs. At the camp, they staked their tipi beside a bonfire, flames licking high. Women skewered buffalo ribs, fat dripping into the coals, and Red Bull told of a hunter who tripped mid-shot, face-planting in mud. Laughter echoed, and Running Moon braided Whitebird's hair, swapping stories of Catherine's first steps and Auguste's babbles. The children slept on buffalo hides, faces soft, while Shooting Star Woman cleaned her rifle, her pistols within reach. Isaiah leaned against a pack, knife carving a stick, eyes on the dark hills. Safe tonight, Pierre said, restringing his bow. Isaiah nodded, grateful for the Hidatsa shield, but kept his rifle close. Isaiah sat by Catherine, whittling a wooden horse. Miss my Carolina kin sometimes, he told Pierre, voice low. But here, with Running Moon, Whitebird, our kids, this is home. Pierre sharpened an arrow, nodding. My father said, hold family, land. I do for Auguste, Shooting Star. Running Moon touched Isaiah's wrist. You led us through Pawnee lands. We're whole, Whitebird added. Our children will carry our names. Shooting Star Woman, oiling her rifle, spoke of a dream. An Assiniboine warrior, spear high. Auguste will be fierce, she said, knife glinting. The group huddled close, their pride sharp, forged in hostile trails, their unity a weapon stronger than steel. Whitebird halted her horse, pointing to a willow-lined bend in the Heart River, where she'd hunted rabbits as a girl. Village is near, she said, untying her recurved bow, arrows fletched with hawk feathers. The group urged their horses faster, hooves kicking clods, dust trailing. Running Moon adjusted her beaded sash, tying 4 beaver pelts and 2 shell necklaces into a pack for the elders. Whitebird braided Catherine's hair, securing it with a red leather cord, then tucked a bone rattle into Auguste's cradle, a gift for the chiefs. Pierre cracked a smile, rare and quick, pointing to smoke curling over a hill, faint drumbeats thumping. Home, he said, his short bow across his chest. Isaiah slung his rifle, pulling Running Moon close, his hand firm on her shoulder. We made it, he whispered, pistol tucked in his belt. Catherine clapped, bouncing in her cradle, while Auguste, strapped to Shooting Star Woman, gripped her cloak, eyes on the smoke. At a creek, Isaiah knelt, filling a hide canteen, but his jaw tightened. White men will swarm soon, he said, recalling St. Louis's clanging docks. Their towns, their rules, they'll choke our lands. Pierre carved a stick, nodding. Jacques warned me. Auguste must learn our trails, our bows. Running Moon rationed jerky, slicing thin strips. We'll teach them to track deer, ride swift, sing Assiniboine songs. Whitebird counted arrows 15 left adding. Hidatsa tales too. Our children won't forget. Isaiah and Pierre signed, Scout the traders' paths. Shooting Star Woman tested her rifle's trigger, voice hard. No settler touches Auguste. Pierre nodded, tying a pack. We'll watch, fight if needed. Isaiah gripped his Kentucky rifle, eyes on Running Moon and Whitebird. I'll guard you here, he said, checking his powder horn. The wilds are ground, not their cities. Pierre tied an eagle feather to Auguste's cradle, bowstring taut. I'll raise him Assiniboine, like my father's blood. Running Moon brushed Catherine's cheek, knife at her hip. She'll learn to shoot, to stand tall. Whitebird strung her bow, promising, Jacques will know Hidatsa, Assiniboine spirit. Shooting Star Woman clutched her rifle, pistols gleaming. Any threat to Auguste, I end it, she said, her knife slashing air. They locked hands, their vow ablaze, ready for any storm. By a low fire, Pierre sat, bow across his knees, arrowheads glinting. Tomorrow's not ours to fear, he told Isaiah, echoing Jacques. Live today. Isaiah nodded, tucking a blanket over Catherine, his knife idle. Pierre grinned, recounting Jacques stumbling in a Hidatsa dance, drunk on corn whiskey, boots tangled. Running Moon laughed, braiding a leather cord for Auguste, while Whitebird sang a Hidatsa lullaby, her voice soft, rocking Jacques' cradle. Shooting Star Woman smiled, cleaning her rifle's flint, their hope sharp as the stars above, their skills a shield for trials ahead. Isaiah hugged Running Moon, Whitebird, Catherine and Jacques, his rifle leaning nearby, powder dry. I'm blessed, he said, voice rough. Carolina's gone, this is my path. Village fires flickered ahead, drums steady, dogs barking, a beacon after Lakota and Blackfeet lands. Isaiah's hand rested on his pistol, pride burning for his life, among Assiniboine and Hidatsa, his Cherokee lessons woven into their ways. The group walked, stars bright, prairie air cool, their faith in their unity ironclad. Hand in hand, they neared the village, pelts and beads ready for the feast, their survival a song, their future a shared fire. Loved Isaiah and Pierre's survival tale? Share your thoughts on their journey below. Want more frontier stories? Check out our next video on Old West battles. Keep exploring history with us.